how linear the Western Hemisphere is in the way we think about things, and that Eastern Hemisphere is more contextual in the way they think. There's these different circles or buckets, categories, and where does it all line up versus just thinking about, what do I enjoy, or what am I really good at, or what can I get paid? They're bringing that all together more, or at least trying to more harmoniously than, what you often see here in the States.
Okay, welcome to the Digible Dudes Podcast. I'm David.
I'm Reid.
Reid, today we're going to do Ikigai. And first, you're going to spell it.
I was just about to say, I asked you how to spell it, and I've already forgotten, and you can tell me right now and then quiz me again in an hour.
Yeah.
I think I'd fail all three.
Yeah, Iki, so I-K-I, and then G-A-I. It's a Japanese word, so now it's like a second in our series of Japanese vocabulary here on the Digible Dudes Podcast.
Okay. I-K-I-G-A-I.
Yep.
All right. Yes. Ask me. I don't know if this is going to be an hour, but
yeah. Well, the definition. Oh, ask
when
you
we wrap up. Yeah.
Okay. So there's a book by this title. That's pretty short. It's like 3 or 4 hours, but I had fallen into this after I learned about Misogi, and then I learned about the book, and it's Ikigai is like a way of living in Japan, and they say it helps contribute to a longer lifespan. So this is like, and I'll get into the reason, but I guess loosely translated is Ikigai means reason for being. So it's sort of leaning quickly into like purpose in a way, like if you think of it in a different way. And the way that they do Ikigai is there's 4 overlapping circles, and in the center is Ikigai. But the 4 parts of life, I guess, that this theory says is important for your life and your being is determining what do you love to do, what are you good at, and what does the world need, and what can you be paid for. And so if people over optimize for any one of those categories, so if you're like, hey, this is what I can be paid for, but it's not something you love doing, or this is what I love doing, but I can't be paid for, then it creates just some poor mental health. You just end up feeling like you're sort of aimless, you feel stuck. So that's if you're only getting a couple of those 4 categories right. So, but they're, pushing is you should really try to say, how do I nail all 4 of these categories? So again, what do you love? What are you good at? What does the world need? And what can I be paid for? And understanding this can lead to better career choices, and just how you spend your time at work and outside of work, and just generally a more fulfilling life. And so it's kind of their way of establishing purpose, I guess.
Well, half of that sounds like a ripoff of 6 Types of Working Genius, but
okay.
I don't know if
I think this was earlier than 6 Geniuses.
I'm joking. Yeah, I think he might have been the one actually. So it's a fun rubric. My first question though is my main question is around what does the world need? Who determines that?
All of this is a personal exploration.
Okay.
And I think that's why it's interesting.
Because people can rationalize some pretty weird stuff as far as what the world needs.
Totally.
Yeah.
And
but if it's like the world needs more love, or the world needs
right.
more music,
right.
like those things at a, kind of more almost artistic or spiritual, are kind of easy. But if this is meant to eventually become semi-practical, then
yeah, well, Reid, I think people would pay you for your love of music, but I don't know if you're good at it. So it may not.
I know I'm not. that'd be non-starter.
So a lot of
have you put yourself through this yet?
I haven't finished it. I'm in the middle of the book, and a lot of the entrepreneur groups I joined. This is something that a lot of people really gravitate towards and go into. And there's some criticisms of it too, but I think entrepreneurs can really latch on to something like this too, because it almost feels like a roadmap. It's like, okay, let me look at these 4 categories and let me just like whiteboard some brainstorm stuff and see what all lines up. And the Japanese aren't as intentional about it, is my understanding. This is just what people have learned that they how they end up spending their lives. And so let's back up a little bit on some of the background. But a lot of Japanese culture, as my understanding, is different than American culture, because in American culture, you may over optimize for what can I be paid for. And that a lot of entrepreneurs or agency owners will sort of get trapped in that. Like, hey, I'm good at this digital ad thing and I can get paid for it, so I'm going to just like really put my effort into that. But then you're skipping out on what you love or what the world needs, in quotation. Whereas the Japanese folks, they may just be they may focus on their craft. Like, I really want to make terrific soy sauce, or what's the drink?
Sake.
Sake, yeah.
Yep.
And that'll just be their craft, and it's okay if it doesn't get more than one or two people big. It's just really doing that every day, and the world needs. I'm thinking, I watched this like YouTube video on like, why are these particular types of I was gonna say paintbrushes, but like calligraphy brushes, why they're so expensive. And you see that these artisans in Japan are putting in like 10 or 12 hours to make one brush, and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, yeah, if you're gonna spend that much time, it's got to be expensive, right? So it's interesting though, because we on our and you did a lot more research into this with the Netflix book that was recommended,
Culture map.
Culture Map, yeah. But it's like we're just conditioned a certain way where it's like the scoreboard is money, and so let me focus on that, and that's what makes success, and then end up with like midlife crises or whatever, like, just really wondering, what am I doing? So anyways, that's the framework for Ikigai, and why I think a lot of entrepreneurs line up with it is that it just gives us almost like a roadmap to like, okay, let me think about this. Is there a different purpose for me, or not? And that's what part of my journey, I think I mentioned on the other podcast, is just being open to like, it may not come to me. It's the whole like only 20% of people find purpose, but I think purpose for the Western culture is different than what at least I'm seeing from this Japanese concept.
Yeah. Well, no doubt. And I think for me, one of the things that stood out in that book, Culture Map, that did talk Western versus Eastern Hemisphere. I think I may have even shared it on one of the podcasts with you after I read that. Um, was how linear the Western Hemisphere is in the way we think about things. So it pretty much lines up with exactly what you're saying, and how they're thinking about this Ikigai, and that Eastern Hemisphere is more contextual in the way they think.
Hmm.
And so it kind of lines up here as far as like there's these different circles or buckets, categories, and where does it all line up versus just thinking about, you know, what am I what do I enjoy, or what am I really good at, or what can I get paid? They're bringing that all together more, or at least trying to more harmoniously, than what you often see here in the States, which is, as you said, somebody's like, oh, I can make money as running a digital agency, and then you're all in on that, and you
Hmm.
lose sight of those other areas. So I think it does make a lot of sense.
I think um, also, like, I think like if you see examples of people doing it, then it's different, right? Like here in America, we have a lot of the keeping up with the Jones style, like that culture kind of like can rub off on you. It's like yeah, if you go spend time like hanging out at the Ritz, you're gonna want to be like, maybe I should get a new shirt or slacks or something, right? And if you live up in the mountains like me, it's like wear Carhartt jackets and coveralls,
Mm-hmm.
basically. And it's just different, and it can feel more. I don't know. It can give you a different feeling of slower pace or what have you. Whereas, I mean, same thing with like our social media. It seems like I was really conditioned into productivity. Like, how do I maximize every minute of the day or hour of the day? And a lot of those Eastern cultures, they have just what feels like a slower pace about it. It's like I go to Japan in the fall of this year, but my understanding is they're still really heavy on fax machines. Like, you'll never see more fax machines than you see in Japan, and it's that to me, it's sort of demonstrates like, yeah, it could be a little slower.
Mm-hmm.
We're just gonna fax it over there and see if they can take your lunch order.
Well, this will probably spark something for you, but and I don't know how many times I'm going to be referencing Gap in the Gain over the next whatever 12
I'll have to do
podcasts.
the podcast so that you can
Y-
get it off your chest.
Yeah, for real. But it probably won't slow me down on the references or applications. But in that book, they talk about the importance of self-determined success criteria, or goals versus peer or society determined.
Mm,
And so your example of keeping up with the Joneses, but just how much more impactful and likely you are to succeed if you are setting your own criteria for success,
mhm,
and how difficult that is, because especially if you're employed and not an entrepreneur, somebody's telling you this is what your goal is, or this is what you got to do, this is what success looks like. And so I thought that they were pretty creative in how they were saying you'd approach that if you're not an entrepreneur, an employee, but it was way easier for them to talk about. And that book mostly is pointed at entrepreneurs adopting that approach. When you start a business or as you're getting further into it, is block out all the noise. And I think they quoted either Teddy or Theodore Roosevelt, but just saying comparison is the anti
of happiness or whatever.
to joy. Yeah. And in the States, again, Western Hemisphere, we are obsessed, with those comparisons and just live in this very idealistic mindset. And so I think what you're describing, this Ikigai, to me feels like more self-determined. It's like, I'm going to think through this using not just triangulating, because there's 5 categories or 4, and see what that really means for me.
I'm going to square up. Squaring.
Yeah, square up. There you go.
It's not as cool as triangulating.
But the other thing in that book, I think still gap in the gain, or maybe the 10x is easier than 2x, but talk about what really motivates entrepreneurs. And I don't know that they needed to qualify that and say just entrepreneurs, but is freedom of time, just general freedom of time, and then of financial freedom, and then relationships, getting to choose. I think I went through this with you last time we were recording, and then the last one is purpose. And so I like how a good portion of this, it's not like a direct connect, but that you're more likely to find those things taking this Ikigai approach than if you were to go at it a different manner, a more standard westernized manner.
And I think the deliberateness matters a lot there, because like if you think about it, like your daughters are probably putting in a lot of time at the end of high school trying to figure out, what am I going to go to college for, right? And then you put in the time there. And then a lot of time for me, I mean, I didn't do the traditional path. And so I didn't really, it was then about survival. And I was like, who will pay me for something right now versus versus anything I love to do. And then, and then after who will pay me for something, it's like, can I get good at this thing? So it's like, now let me figure it out. But again, like the any love from it has, I question if it's come from love or if it's more what you had said from the book Mastery, where it's like you just get good at something and then you'll start liking it, just for the fact of being good. But then you and I have numerous times on the podcast talked about, like, is this really, or making a difference, right? Is it good for the world? Like, I think there's a lot of good, but then desire for more. Can you impact more people or more of society or what have you? And that's something that, it's just been an unclosed loop for me.
Yeah, I hear you. I know that it's back to self-determined, but I would think I don't know if they have as many coaches, life coaches, back to civil or their culture versus our culture. But I would want somebody to help validate, but not, of course, be peer-based. So I'm not trying to contradict myself, but that it's like the money part. It's so important, it would seem. It's like, if I'm going to really focus on this, so who would you verify or validate that through? And then, am I really good at it? So many people don't have self-awareness. They think they're good at things that they're not. So I'm not trying to poke holes out. I directionally, I really like it, but I think that there's a danger there. And like the joy part, it's like, is that something that is there any filter or qualifier there? It's like, think 10 years versus think 1 year, because what I enjoy now isn't necessarily what I was enjoying 10 years ago.
You hit my, that's going to be my closing question. So we'll come back to that. But even for those that aren't entrepreneurs or running a company, I still think Ikigai is interesting, because even if you're, I don't know, an account manager here, or you're running a marketing team on the multifamily side, I think you can think about, I think it's healthy to take some time and think about Ikigai from like a full life choice, but also I'm a realist for, like, all right, I'm in this job right now and I can't make any wholesale change, or it'd be disruptive to make wholesale changes. So let me try to do Ikigai real quick and right now my day to day. And that, in many ways, I think could bring peace to a lot of people, because it's similar to the, whether it's Six Working Geniuses or Dan Martell's Buy Back Your Time, but you could be like, what do I love doing out of what's on my plate? my responsibilities, right? What am I great at? It's the time audit from EOS in a way. Great, I'm already getting paid, so that's nailed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think that could be healthy, just to again see the bright spots, and then say you could look at your weak spots there and say like, okay, I need a team member to sort of take this, because I don't like making creative or whatever, and then I get more fulfillment out of my job, and that's great. I think that would be good success, and then over time get to what you were just asking about, like how does it change in seasons of life?
Mm-hmm. Totally. Well, if you're fortunate enough to not, I'll say, need or require the paid portion of that uh, rubric, do you think you just pull it out?
What do you mean?
Meaning, I'll say serial entrepreneurs, but as an example, or somebody that hits the lottery for that matter, if you if money is a non-issue, which I know I'm speaking to 0.001% of the population, probably, but I'm still curious.
Well, it helps remove. I like to think of things in first principles and be like, let's pretend money didn't matter for anybody. Then what? And it
Yeah,
helps get
yeah,
there. So
exactly. Well, then, is it fair to assume that you would just eliminate that from that rubric, or
I
does
don't
it
know.
still something that you would or should, for any reason, I guess, keep, or do I just dismiss that?
I've talked to a couple entrepreneurs recently that were out of our industry, and one woman, she had a very big exit, and so money is definitely no
Non-issue. Yeah.
non-issue for her, and she first tried to go straight into a bunch of charitable causes, and she was doing like donating to charity. She like launched a foundation. She was funding the foundation, and she said it just made her feel not good. Like she was like, this is
Mm-hmm.
weird. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I should feel good for giving money
Mm-hmm.
and helping these people. And then she tried donating her time, and she's like, okay, I feel a little better with donating my time here, but something still feels wrong. And this is a 13-year journey. I'm like breaking down real quick. What she ended up discovering was, for her, she doesn't get the fulfillment of her purpose if she's not fully utilizing herself. So she feels like she needs to show up as her best version of herself. Like it needs to totally tax her skills in order to get the. It's almost that growth mindset you're talking about that a lot of entrepreneurs feel.
Mm-hmm.
So for her at this point in life, just donating time in a soup kitchen is not challenging her enough. So therefore, she's not getting the reinforcement. Just donating money is also not doing enough for her. So she has to, for her, it's how now she's kind of orienting around these categories, although she has criticisms of these categories, but she's orienting around, okay, what else can I, in a way, I want to get rewarded as well, meaning monetarily for the work I'm doing, even though I don't need it. So that was just her journey in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it could change by person. Like I think some people might very well be that way, but I also her and another fella, it seems like they're like, no, I still want to feel like I'm being compensated in some way. And then I think that Dan Perkins from Die with Zero would say like, it's okay if you love dancing, if you remember his example for his wife,
Mm-hmm.
and also now that you got paid for it, you leverage the money in some way to do something that makes you feel good.
Mm-hmm. I wonder what the roots of this are. Like, do you know how far back this Ikigai?
Mm,
I'm gonna
I
keep calling it rubric, but because the
yeah.
pay part, it's like, not that it didn't or wouldn't have applied in like the 12th century or something, but
See
and
if I
then the other side of that is, if this is, I guess, catching on, is there, I asked about life coaches, but like a platform or something that can walk you through like key questions to ask yourself within those four buckets.
Yeah, it says it's so like I said, I'm not all the way through the book yet. That's titled Ikigai, but they say it goes all the way back to their philosophical way of life with some Buddhism and traditional things built in. It was strong with the samurai, strongly influenced by the samurai,
Mm,
and they're tied to their feeling of needing to do duty, honor, and self mastery, as well as like Zen Buddhism with mindfulness and presence.
mm,
Um, so it's like very different than how we treat Western culture, where it's more about achievement, right?
mhm,
Which is kind of the money thing. It's like achievement or like gold medals or sort of thing.
mhm,
Which I do wonder, like, backing up just a smidge, but with Western, we're the melting pot, right? Or the U.S. is the melting pot, and so we do have a lot of these other cultures. But is that what made it kind of messy, versus like and maybe you got this from the culture map thing, but if there's a culture of thousands of years of history, maybe it's a little less messy, because since we're so focused on the achievement side of things.
No, they definitely highlight that. I mean, she often talks on kind of both sides of each culture. I mean, I don't think the whole book's kind of split down the middle, but just but the benefits and the disadvantages of a highly homogenous culture versus a highly diversified. And one of the things she calls out from what I remember is just context, low context, high context. And just if you're in a culture like America that doesn't have more of a homogenous culture, or, centuries and centuries of history, that we're very low context, which we need more things and explain, less is inferred. I don't think this is really getting to your question of messy or non-messy, but I'm still bringing it up, is just that with Eastern cultures in particular, she called out Asian culture. It's extremely low context, that you don't need to talk through things as much. Way more is just understood. And I think what she connected almost to productivity, which again, I may not be hitting the mark here, but was just that if you're looking for higher productivity, low context cultures or teams often are better. But if you're looking for more innovation and you have more patience, then high context is, maybe more
Excels.
the route to go. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, I could see it that way. It's kind of the whole I think about New York, and like when I lived there, how many different cultures there are. It's like I couldn't go, you know, I was a mile wide basically, but an inch deep on learning about these other cultures. And so that to me sort of feels clunky and messy. It's great because you can take assimilate a bunch of things from other cultures, but you have to try to put together in a way that works for you,
Hmm.
right? Versus like if you grew up where the culture is very similar, I could understand why you just, as you're explaining it, like it just makes sense. You just understand, why we're doing it this way, or why that person is, I don't know, in charge or whatever. Um, which is okay. It's all fine. It's just interesting, about a way of life.
Well, do you think my last question on Ikigai model or paradigm is there something missing? So I
Yes,
don't remember if you remember me asking you that with 6 types of working genius.
you did. Yeah,
Yeah. Is there a seventh that should have made the cut? Or what do you think the seventh was before they got to six?
yeah. I
And
don't
part of me
remember what my
also
answer was
wonders,
on that.
like, should six go to five? Like I can't help it. I
Uh-huh,
just wonder with this stuff.
uh-huh.
But with Ikigai, do you think that the four, or that
Y-
there's a fifth category?
Yeah, spirituality is the one that comes to mind. Like you see that in like the Wheel of Life that we've talked about before, and
Tony Robbins.
yeah,
Yeah.
and some other coaching. I don't know that Tony made it. I think he like adopted it and then added some flavor to it. Um, but yeah, so a lot of people have spirituality in their wheel, and I see that in a lot of these other things of like, how do you fit your spirituality into it? So to me, it just seems like the one thing that is an obvious miss on this, and it doesn't mean religion. It just I'm taking it very like just spirituality in general, which I'm doing a lot of like reading and research on because I haven't. It's not been my mo before, so I'm super new to it, and yet now it's feeling like an obvious miss, at least from, the basic explanation of Ikigai.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
But then I wanted to at least tap off on seasons of life. So, like, how do you think it? I don't know if that means even changed in your own life, but I like that you brought it up. Like, because I would think what David cared about at 15 is different than at 25, which is going to be different than at 45. And the way that the book, I'm like a third of the way into it. It's not written so much like there's seasons of life there because it seems like people are sort of more fluid is the way that I read the book, where they're like, oh, okay, I'll put a little bit more time into my craft now and then I'll ease back, but I still do the craft. And so they kind of like, it's not like, and it's a more micro economy where there's way more like solopreneurs and like little business shops and stuff that they're talking about versus more like where we just have really large corporations. And so it gives you the flexibility to do that because it's almost like everyone's the craftsman. It's like everyone's an entrepreneur in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And so that allows them to find more balance already with what their interests are. So I think that is playing into it versus here in the States. But here it would seem to me that people go through their kind of like achievement, money earning years, and then they're kind of like, okay, now family's more important to me. Now I focus on my bucket list or something. So I could see how that would change, but I'm just curious about your thoughts on it.
Well, I don't I certainly don't disagree with you. I mean, I wonder, and that's why I think I asked you almost up front about, is it 10 years versus 1 year? But I would think similar to Perkins, Bill Perkins. He talks about thinking in terms of decades, and instead of one bucket list,
Mm,
that's going to change
hmm.
every decade, and this for me would line up with that. Like if I went through this exercise based on how I was aging through life, I think it would definitely look different.
Yeah,
And it'd be great to see. I mean, not great like meaning idealistically, but where there was overlap,
mm,
or would it be all four of those would materially change every 10 years? That's what I don't know, because
yeah,
it seems like the things that I really enjoy, that the core tenets of that, I guess, it depends on how you unpack it, like psychologically versus like more pragmatically, practically, like business terms, um, which I wouldn't even have thought to say, like at 15 or even at 25. But my
mhm,
mind starts to drift there. But just how I would unpack that would have a lot to do with probably how much similarity you see versus how much differences
mm.
from every 10 years to the next.
Yeah, I like right now what's working well for me is the concept of taking that wheel of life and sort of like merging it with Ikigai. Like I see Ikigai as almost fitting into the like a lot of people in their wheel life have like a financial or career component. It's like, okay, cool. This is a nice framework for the money earning part of yourself. What else is important? Because what it doesn't also, I said spirituality was included, but Ikigai doesn't talk about family. It doesn't talk about friends or
Mm,
other things like that either, right? This is, so I think this is more of, again, like this is more, to me, it seems like a good framework for like, this is what I do in order to support myself,
mm-hmm,
and if it fits these categories, I'm going to be generally a happier person.
mm,
But then you have these other categories that you need to also be, I guess, factoring for, considering, and deliberate with. So yeah, to me, I think they fit well into one another. But um, I don't know. I could be butchering each of these, and that's fine. I'll make my own. I said on another thing on a different recording, like my own version of orange chicken over here.
well, when you finish the second half of that book, let me know if anything's changed
Yeah,
the
yeah.
way that you see Ikigai.
Yeah. Yeah, super interesting. Well, anyways, glad to know of it now, and hopefully you get something out of it, and maybe those that listens too.
Yeah.
All right. See you guys next time.